Good afternoon, Danvers. Welcome to the Topics of the Town News. This is February 27th, 2025, and welcome to our report. Today, I'm acting as your host, as I always do, and I have a special guest today, Damien Anketel.
Hello, Danvers.
And Danvers. I almost called you Danvers. Damien has been a former candidate for the Senate, state Senate, and you have been politically active. So just give us a little background of who you are, what you're doing, and how have you affected the politics in the state of Massachusetts?
Well, I don't know if I've affected the politics in the state of Massachusetts, but I have ran for state senate twice now, the last two election cycles against Joan Lovely, senator here. I was looking to become senator in the 2nd Essex District, which is Peabody, Beverly, Danvers, and Salem. I work with local campaigns,
Right.
some here in Danvers, some fairly active with the Danvers Republican Town Committee, even though I'm a Peabody resident, but Peabody doesn't really have a very active party involvement, engagement. So I spend a lot of time here in Danvers working with some of the campaigns that are going on, and you'll see me, as soon as the weather gets a little nicer, passing out some of the articles and flyers for some of my candidates that I've chosen to support.
And what we need to do is we need to get through the local elections in Danvers and then follow through on the state elections in November, correct?
That's correct.
This is the second year of the 2-year election cycle.
So we got
Right.
this year, and then we'll have another year next year. and
Right.
That's when we'll get the elections going up and
Right.
going. But, it's fun. It's
Well,
fun.
welcome, and I hope you are ready to comment on some of the issues that we're going through, because Danvers itself is going through an election cycle. But before we get to that, I want to get back to the agenda and opinions are solely by the Topics of the Town host, our guests, contributors, and commentators. So just want to make sure that everybody understands that this is our view of the environment that we live in. And I have today's quote, and it's a special saying that I have been using in the past, but I think it's appropriate to bring it up again. If you lose money, you lose much. If you lose friends, you lose more. If you lose faith, you lose it all. And that is a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, of all people, that I have been using that quote, and it's so appropriate of what's going on with our population in the town and in the state. Now, the second part of this Eleanor Roosevelt quote is, be flexible, but stick to your principles. And the thing is that we can't be wishy-washy. We have to stand behind what we believe, and we have to defend what we believe. And the last one is really my favorite one, and it's by Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. A little consideration, a little thought for others makes all the difference. So we need to be able to understand what's going on. We need to comprehend what other people are feeling, and we need to work together to get our point across. So, Uh, we are talking today about the budgets. Basically, my focus today has been on the federal, state, and specifically Danvers budget. Now, as everybody knows, Danvers town manager, or his designee at the moment, does not issue the budget until March 1, which in our case is really tomorrow is February 28th, Saturday is March 1. We expect that budget to be available to the public, and I'm going to try to receive one before the selectmen get it. I have been accused of being a conspiracy theorist, so I just want to defend myself. But my interest has always been for the good of the residents. Residents are the engine that makes this town, and the taxes are the currency of our government. Well, of all my former conspiracies, they have become facts. DEI, we had the DEI director resign, and this has to be eliminated from our policies in this town. It has already started in the federal government. The state will follow because there will be lacking some funds by the education department, and we'll see how that works out.
Today, Maura Healey issued a directive to all the cities and towns not to eliminate their DEI programs.
Well, then she is not in charge in Danvers. But we have already a resignation. The DEI director left as quickly as the town manager did.
Yep.
She followed him because that's how it was all set up, and that position must be eliminated. DEI is not going to have to go into the HR because that's what they're really planning on doing. But HR is also awaiting the results of the new manager search. That position in our town needs to be eliminated. That position has caused more problems with our employees than anything else that has happened in the town of Danvers. We had, over the 2 years that I was collecting information in regards to the resignations, retirements, firings, and whatever, over the 2 years during the COVID, specifically, there were 220 turnovers in our employment of 700 some people.
Ooh.
So 200, that's over 2 years. Now, they will not give me any information since then, but I will ask for it because that is a significant number where the turnover is causing us expenses. The manager resigned, as we all know. New beginning is coming. The select board, 2 down, now we have 2 to go, need responsible candidates. And we'll get into the candidates because we have the sign-up sheet already, and we have 4 candidates for the 2 positions that are being vacated or being open for the town Board of Selectmen. School committee has abandoned the education of town schools. And I have made this very clear in the several shows in the past. I believe that our education system, or our education process in the town of Danvers, has been abducted by the state education department. Now, I have been carrying in my pickup a pile of envelopes of curriculum that's been dictated to our school system, and it's by DESE, which is the Department of Secondary Education.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, we have our own curriculum directors. I don't know what they do. But federal is also taking steps into resolving the education department. They want to eliminate it. Maybe we should do the same thing in Danvers, where the state should stay out of the way and let us direct what education should be done. We need to understand the education superintendent is not only dependent on the funding from our local taxes, but the schools are bought and paid for by the state.
Well, if you take away the state education department, you're going to have a problem there. Who's going to pay money into the candidates' campaign coffers?
Oh, well, that's one avenue. But right now, I have a article that was planted by the school department into the patch. And what it says is that the new budget for the school department, which is under the control of the school committee, is now projected to be $53.9 million. Now, last year, just for comparison, it was $51,990,000, $52 million.
Okay.
So the budget that's controlled by the school committee is basically for salaries and wages, is for the town of Danvers under the school committee is $53 million. It went up 3.8%. Now, we have not gone through a major teacher's contract negotiations because that was done year before.
Mm-hmm.
So we have flexibility on that. Now, the new superintendent, as of last year's budget, when I attended the hearing, focused primarily on special education. The thing is that I have explained to the school committee at that hearing is that we cannot just focus on special education. We have to focus on the 90% of the students that are being left behind because they're all equal now. There's no challenge to them. So that is one issue that we'll be talking about. But the new funding is being depleted from the federal and state funding. The town needs to ask, what do we get for our school funding that we provide? And we currently provide $54 million. But that's not the whole picture. The picture is that the $54 million turns into $84 million because the budget that the school committee administers does not include facilities, the fields, the cleanup of the buildings, the utilities, and operation of the buildings themselves. And we have 5 grammar schools, and now we have a middle school and a high school that's being taken care of. So every year we go through this gyration of what does it really cost us to educate our students? And the thing is that $25 to $30 million is really calculated as town funding of the school department, in addition to the $54 million budget.
Mm-hmm.
So the budget is there. I have last year's budget here, and what it looks like is that general government under this budget for last year was $36 million. But the total budget was $144 million. Now, $144 million is made up of several items. Property tax, $96 million. State aid, $13.769 million, just like we talked about earlier. Local receipts, which are taxes that are permitted by our state legislature to be collected on such things as meals and hotels and everything else, are worth $15.78 million, and other available funds is $2.3 million. So what we have is a subtotal of $127 million worth of revenue that's coming in, but the bulk of it, 90% of it, is tax receipts.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I don't think people realize
Trash tax.
trash tax is another one. Yes. And that was finagled by our past town manager
Yeah.
because that's been discussed for years. And the town manager before him threatened it, but never implemented it because he knew that it had to stay on the basic tax revenue form. So we are into the tax situation, and we'll get into some details, but what I like to do is the current stories that are hitting the headlines. The biggest one right now is the MBTA zoning. It's been declared by the state auditor, and you should be familiar with that.
Yep.
She has declared what? That it's a unfunded.
It's an unfunded mandate, which makes it illegal in the state of Massachusetts, and therefore that all the requirements that the state are placing on the cities and towns for this, they no longer can enforce it. So
They can't enforce it, and they should not file suits against the communities that have rejected this as an option, that they are not part of this deal. The other part of this deal is, what is the next thing coming down the pike? Is the AFLA, which is the auxiliary building
housing,
for the elderly. That's what it was meant to be. We have a defined zoning requirement for that, but now all of a sudden our legislators, and you were almost one, the state and the federal probably doesn't have much to do with it, but the state legislature, the representatives and the Senate, have passed legislation that makes every single one-story or single-story, single-family home a potential two-family home, because that has become legal now.
yeah, they look into what this legislation allows to happen is for a single family property to put up to 750 additional square feet on an individual's standalone dwelling that allows for you to have a family member or a relative, some type of relative to move into the house. It's not made for non-family members right now, but we know how laws. Oh well, we can adjust that. You can make it a rental. We're going to see it later on down the road. But
This is a progression to two-family homes in every single one of our slots, if we wish to. That's the one thing that's still, but the funding, the money value of a two-family is a heck of a lot more than a single family.
yeah, well, these will kind of be. They'll be. It's not really a two-family. It's still considered one family. It's almost like a in-law suite, in-law apartment.
We have
Gotta know.
in-law apartment zoning in our community already. We have refined and proposed the proper zoning requirements that is limited to the size and the location and the exits and entrances. However, now the state is saying, forget about your zoning. Everybody's allowed to have one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is the dictatorship that's been happening. And I know I'm a conspiracy theorist.
It's an overreach by the state government,
It sure is.
just like the MBTA is.
This is exactly the same. It's a follow through.
Yeah, yeah.
State budget that is being discussed right now is also contemplating on increasing taxes like I had on my show last week. There are taxes that are being planned for candy tax, nicotine tax, a new prescription drug tax, $2 on every prescription that you fill.
That's an administrative fee, sir.
Oh, I know, but who's collecting that? Capping charitable contributions. They want to eliminate that.
Yep.
Municipal option taxes. Instead of controlling state spending, Healy wants to give cities and towns the ability to raise local taxes on hotel stays, meals, and even your vehicle. Here we go, excise tax coming up.
By miles.
You know what? I just received the excise taxes for my vehicles at the house. You know, I have a Corvette sitting in the garage. You know what my excise tax was on that?
$1,000.
$8.75.
There you go.
It's a 1978.
And you're complaining?
No, I'm not complaining at all. But the thing is, what they want to do is they want to double the excise tax.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, the turkey this show is Governor Healy.
I think that's appropriate.
It's so appropriate. But the thing is that we have to remember that she's got water up her feathers. So, the thing is that the state budget currently is debating the announcement about the $425 million injection of excess funds that have been made available to the governor for supporting the illegal immigration in this state.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what kind of benefits do they get that we don't get?
Well, they get a lot of benefits. Right now, the average illegal immigrant lives a lifestyle of a person who makes about $84,000 a year. Right now. So this extra $450,000. If you remember, we were on a show last year. I was talking about it during the election, but in July, we spent $600 million in the month of July last year, and they were expecting it to go up. If you do the math out, all these numbers they're saying $1 billion a year, $1 billion a year. That's not true. If you have 350,000 people in this country, in this state, that are illegal immigrants, that's if you go by the state's numbers. The federal numbers are over 1 million. But if you take that number, the 350,000, and multiply it by $3,000 a month, $3,000 a month. That's $1 billion.
Right.
So their numbers are wrong. I have been informed that the numbers are closer to $2 billion a month that they're spending. What they're doing is they're billing out and paying about whatever they're saying, $300 million a month. But the actuality is they're taking on debt. The debt loads of the state right now are massive, and they were expecting to pay that off with federal dollars that are coming in. But the federal government said we're not going to be paying that anymore. That's why you're seeing more of Healy's rush to waive all of these exemptions on food and candy and tobacco, on all those taxes. She's also talking about increasing the income tax to the state, another 2.5%.
2.5%?
2.5%, adding another 2.5%. But some people that I'm hearing, they're hoping to raise it 5%. So, with that said, they're also proposing, they're discussing with the legislature right now, the abilities to push an income tax, not just from the state level, but allowing towns and cities and towns to implement an income tax on the residents. So they're looking to divert it because they're not going to have. They're going to also cut back on state aid to local communities too by a lot, maybe even eliminate it completely.
This is going to become another New York City with local taxes, state taxes, federal taxes, and anything else that moves, they'll tax.
It's constitutional, so it's not like it hasn't been fought in the past.
Right.
So other states do it, so anything they can do for taxes. But there's a lot of stuff that's working against us right now. Federal government's cutting back taxes, and the solution, which, I hate to say this, but traditionally Democrats' solution to shortcomings in revenues is to increase taxes instead of reducing taxes to allow the economy to grow faster. They don't see growth as a revenue generator. They see taxation as a revenue generator. But what happens there, as we all know, people start to tighten their belt. They don't put their money out there as much. In our circumstance, they'll just leave the state.
Well, you know what? Leaving the state is not such outrageous situation. There are a lot of people that are talking that way because they are fed up with the amount of taxes and the types of taxes. I don't think anybody understands how this thing accumulated into a large payment to the local, state, and federal. And we never know what the total amount is because it takes an accountant to figure that out. And the thing what's happening is we are getting threatened by taxes. And what I have is an article that was issued just recently that the outflow of residents from the state of Massachusetts in percentage-wise to the population is very similar to what's going on in California.
Yeah.
California is taxing everything that moves, they tax.
They try to retroactively tax people that left the state. They still want to tax them.
Well, of course they do, because they
want to give them like a 1-year carryover from when they leave the state to tax people for one more additional year beyond their residency. It's craziness.
Well, Governor Healy, you're really set up on the turkey farm, and what you have to do is you have to be very careful because we have select board hearings or elections coming up. Maybe what we should have is a recall election for the governor of Massachusetts.
It'd be nice if Massachusetts had that option,
I know.
but we do not, unfortunately. So we're stuck with her for another 1.5 years, 2 years. That's if we smarten up. She is running again, although I don't think she was expecting to. She was expecting the Democrats to win the White House, and she was actually planning to vamoose up to Washington and let Driscoll step into her position.
Yep.
And they already were talking who would take Driscoll's place, stuff like that, already up at the State House. So it's crazy.
Well, I hope things change because we do not need that type of management that abandons the population and all they do is serve themselves.
Yeah.
So, to follow up before we get into the details on the budget, and I think that's where we're going to end this today because the budgets are very serious in our future. We have elections coming up in the town of Danvers, and that's being held in May. And what we have is town election filing deadline for papers is March 25th. Ballot placement is going to be held on March 27th. Final voter registration date will be April 26th. And in-person early voting has been scheduled for April 26, 2025, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And I even went and talked to the clerk, and he says, who determined that we're going to have a in-person early voting? And what I was told is that it was determined by the town clerk and the registrars.
Mhm.
And really what it was presented to the Board of Selectmen for their approval at the last meeting, and I didn't see any approval. It was just presented as the fact.
Yeah, that's
So-
what I heard as well, yeah.
So we need to determine how these elections are going to take place. It's changing in our federal elections. We need to come back to a one-day election period and go back to having paper ballots like we used to.
Yeah, I believe that should be the best way to do it too, so.
The thing is that we are being led down the path, and we are following the state regulation, Mr. Galvin's regulations, and that's where it's got to change.
Yep.
So, what I have today is a very brief discussion in regard to the Board of Selectmen. We have 4 candidates for the 2 positions that are open, that are coming up for election. One of them is Dan Bennett. He's an incumbent. So Dan is running for his position that he's held for, I think, 14 or 16 years. Michael E. Baxter is running for another seat on the Board of Selectmen. Kevin Birch, B-E-R-I-C-H, is running for a position. Sandy Franceschini, she was a guest on our show for many times, and she is thrown her hat in for being the 4th candidate for the 2 positions that are being open. David Mills, as far as I'm concerned, he has not taken out papers, and he has been claiming that enough is enough. He's done with the position. So he has withdrawn from candidacy. So what we have is we have an incumbent, Dan Bennett, and Michael Baxter, Kevin Birch, and Sandy Franceschini running for the 2 seats that are being available for election.
Yep.
Now, Ben, if you can put up my one and only candidate for the school committee. School committee is Maxwell Rudin. Now, he is a young man that presented himself at various meetings, and he sent out a very detailed presentation of his positions today, as a matter of fact, and I have not brought it with me, but I would like to invite Mr. Rudin to come and present his role as school committee, because he's running for school committee, and the only seat that's open is the chairman at this time.
Yep. I met with him, and he's a nice young man. He's his heart's there, that's for sure, absolutely, and he definitely has a vision for the school department, school committee.
And this is a thankless position because, as I said earlier, the school department, the school education process in our town has been abducted and basically under the control of the state education department.
Yep.
And the thing is, I don't know why we even elect the school committee, because the only reason they're there is to confirm the $54 million that has been requested by the superintendent.
Yep.
And the only role that they have is selecting the superintendent. And I don't know whether they have the right superintendent or not, but I have not been impressed.
Yeah.
And that's my opinion, and I stick to it. So,
I've met Sandy too.
Yes.
Sandy used to work on my campaign. She was my Danvers chairperson here, and she's a wonderful, wonderful woman. And the town of Danvers would be very, very lucky to have somebody like her representing them. She's outstanding, smart, understands the school, dedicated, understands the town, dedicated to the school systems. Her family grew up here. She's a spectacular person, and again, like I said, Danvers would be very lucky to have her.
and just to wrap up the MBTA zoning, which is impacting us because of the laws that are being passed by our legislators, and they're being imposed on us. I understand that there's a Town of Danvers citizens petition is being prepared regarding the MBTA law, because it has been found to be illegal, for one. And now we have the AFLA, which is the senior living facilities or apartments that are being planned for each and every one of our single-family homes. I think there's probably going to be another citizens petition, but I think that needs to be explored. And what I want to do is next program, which will be on March 7th, and that will be, and I will have to check my book, because these things are coming on like wildfire. March 7th is Friday, and we'll be doing the show on Friday, March 7th at 12:30. What I'm thinking of is inviting the candidates for the Board of Selectmen, and let them have a discussion in regard to the budget, because that's when the budget is going to be considered by the Board of Selectmen, and they will do that on the previous Tuesday. They'll accept the town manager's proposed budget, and in reality, this budget is really the selectmen's budget, because he works, the town manager works directly, and the only responsibility he has is to the Board of Selectmen. So we'll talk about that, but I want to introduce them at least to our audience. Our audience may be limited, but we have a voice, and we want to get them, similar to what we did with the state legislature.
Yep.
And Miss Lovely did not want to attend, but I think you were on the show a couple of times.
I was, yes.
And I appreciate that, because what we need is to know our candidates. So, here we are. We're into the town of Danvers. This is a special report, and what I wanted to do is go over the federal, state, and Danvers budget. Federal current status of actions, framework agreed to, but the amount is still as previously proposed. So the federal government budget is presented to is agreed to have this limitation, but we don't know what that is yet. At least I don't.
It hasn't been presented out there yet.
That's right. It's been voted upon. The framework has
Yeah.
been voted upon, but it has not been presented. All we have is interim rolling budget proposals for a month or two at a time. So the budget itself, that's going to be a surprise. I think we're all going to experience, because the feds are not going to give away their tax revenue that they've collected all these years. And the establishment is working well and getting paid for it.
I'd be very surprised if there's not any cuts at all in spending, especially with the large amount of money that they're finding that is being squandered in foreign countries. Right now, they think that over $2 trillion has left the country to aid other countries in DEI, everything from DEI programs to weird science, drugging animals and
Right.
doing all kinds of weird stuff. So it's not, the Wuhan lab and China, all these things that we just, I think that is going to stop pretty.
The research that has been funded by our tax money is basically what happened to us 5 years ago. And we got nailed for, they wanted to destroy the economic system in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And we, as sheep, have fallen into that role
Yep.
because we believe that our government was there to represent us. And they are there to represent themselves and to make themselves rich.
Yep.
So, that's something that we should be watching, and we should be looking forward to seeing how they will react to the changes that should be proposed. The state, excuse me, the state, on the other hand, is currently trying to save their behind by asking for every spare dime, nickel, and penny that's been made available from the excess funding that they've been collecting over the years. It's a savings account.
Mm-hmm.
So just to balance the budget, they're robbing from Peter to give to Paul, basically. Now, debating in the legislature, Senate, House already passed as reported last week. The House has basically passed the $425 million dollar incentive to fund the illegal immigration population in the states.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you've mentioned that this is a drop in the bucket. Wait till the bill comes in.
Yeah, yeah, and they're just going to try to push it down until they can get somebody in there to take care of it. But another little sleight of hand that the state did a few years ago, if everybody remembers, Susan Bump said, "Oh, we got $3 billion left over, so we're going to give refunds to people. By state law, it has to go back." Well, the state legislature tried to fight it. They tried to come up with some finagling, but one thing that wasn't very well reported is the day after those checks went out, the state changed their budget for the following year to add a $3 billion expenditure so that they wouldn't have to pay that money back. They can always cut back on funding, but they didn't want to have to dole out $3 billion back. So,
Well, no, that would have become cutting of the budget. That $3 billion would have to be cut from the current budget. And the current budget, I think, is $56 billion now.
yeah, it just passed last year. Yeah, $56 billion.
$56 billion. I remember when I was on the Board of Selectmen, the state budget was at $12 billion. No, it was 3 at that time. This was back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then it started growing and growing. So they're living on excess funds that have been saved from the taxes that they've received. So the one thing that I'm waiting for, and that's why I brought this budget, is that the town of Danvers depends on state revenue, state aid, education aid, library aid for probably $25 million. And the thing is, that has not even been discussed by the town manager, the interim town manager, or the Board of Selectmen. What are they waiting for?
Yeah, yeah. The new town manager is going to have to be very smart about certain things, especially they're going to have the ability to be able to cut certain employment. They're going to have to be able to fire people. They're going to have a very sophisticated financial analytical capability that most, town managers are town managers, but we've been living in a pretty cushy
Right.
life. They've been very fortunate not to have to deal with things that happened in the 70s or into the 50s when we had major downsizing of government inputs. So they're going to have to deal with that. And it's the town managers now that have been living the life are going to have a real hard time with this unless they are very sophisticated and capable. And the ones that come out of it on the other side in a good footing will be warriors,
Well,
financial
look,
warriors.
look what's happening right now. And I'm going to, the first thing that the town manager, new town manager, is going to have to do is cut the school budget for one. Because $54 million plus the $30 million will equal to half of the budget that he has no control over. Or he thinks he doesn't have any control. There is control that has been made available. The thing is that the current school department and the superintendent believe that they have funds available as they need it. The thing is that the town manager will not have the flexibility of playing with these numbers because the state is going to be defunct on supporting the town. The tax revenue of the town is not increasing any more than 2.5%. And the thing is, unless they pass some stupid law that supersedes 2.5, they have no other option in the town, so they're going to have to make cuts.
Yeah. The town itself is going to have a significant cut in revenues. Once the federal funding is depleted for all of those illegal immigrant housing up on the highway, all of those revenues from those taxes, those surcharges, are going to disappear. And that's a lot of money. It's like $1.5 million out of the town budget, right? Something like
Yeah.
that. Somewhere around $1 million and a half.
Well, the thing
gone.
That I don't understand is I read this article by the Patch, and they were so great. There was only 3.8% increase, but the budget went up to $54 million, and the superintendent felt so good about keeping all the services. And one thing that I noticed in there, that the services were mostly for the teachers and not the students. And the thing that I don't understand is we have an influx of illegal immigrant students in this town. And I believe that there has been no disclosure on the numbers, but there is a fee that the state pays for every single one of those students to attend our school system. And there's no disclosure of how much money is being spent and how our students are being affected in the school system because of this influx.
Yeah.
Now, I believe, I was told, it was reported that most of the illegal students are going to Smith School. Now, that one was built for over 120 students over and above the needs that were required at that time. And now they have decided that that's the school, that's where all the students are going to go to.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about it. Transparency of this situation is not being very clear because parents do not know what is going on in the school system.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Illegal immigration in the town is being swept under the rug because that's the Danvers way.
Well, I know that Peabody, my hometown where I live now, Peabody had to put $1,250,000 to aid out of our own budget. It wasn't from the state, wasn't from the feds. It came from the city of Peabody's budget. We had to increase our budget by $1.25 million, just 3 months ago. So I'm sure Danvers has to do the same thing.
Well, see, Danvers does not disclose that type of information because we even have our legislators feel so good about Danvers being so friendly and so receptive to the illegal immigration that's being imposed on us by the state.
Yeah.
So we've gone through this kind of activity when we had the homeless population in Danvers.
Mm-hmm.
146 individuals, I believe at that time, or families, were being housed in our hotels and motels. This time, I don't see that happening, but you never know. There are hotels that are being used for illegal immigration and the housing of these individuals. And I'm myself a legal immigrant to this country. I know how it is. But the thing is that we have to disclose this information because the taxpayers are being pushed into the corner and they're getting squeezed all the time.
Yeah.
So, town of Danvers, school performance, we've talked about that in the past. Now, the one thing that I've noticed recently is that we have very little discussion in regard to the Essex Tech relationship with the town of Danvers. Well, the town of Danvers still has 264 students at the Tech. They are still going to cost us $4 to $5 million in tuition that is being charged. But what they've accomplished is that the governor now is proposing a lottery system for acceptance to the Essex technical community. Now, Essex Tech is comprised of 51 communities that can send their students because of the Essex Agricultural School, and they have 14 or 15 communities that can send students to the Essex Tech because they are part of the technical school that was abandoned back, I don't know, I think it was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So the school system is working well because it's being managed properly, but now, for some reason, the governor is getting injected into the decision process of the Essex Tech. Are they trying to screw up the Tech now?
Well, what ended up happening, I don't know if you remember this. I don't know if it was the Salem News. It might have been the Patch last summer. The superintendent reached out to Sally Kern, Joan Lovely, just to complain that they're spending so much money to send so many students over there, and they want to limit the amount of students that leave the high school to go to to the tech, this is, oh, well, you know, I'm doing a lousy job. These people are looking for better alternatives for their education. And therefore, you know, he needs the help from the state legislature to eliminate people looking for a better option. Instead of doing better here in Danvers, making the school system better, making the people have a better option, and choosing to come to Danvers High School rather than going to the tech. You go to the tech, you can earn money while you're in your senior year. You can go to jobs. You get jobs leaving there. You get access to education that Danvers High School just doesn't give the same quality. It's the quality. If you give people the opportunity to get a great education here in Danvers, and it's not the teachers, it's the educational system, the curriculum that is being offered to them.
Administration.
It's the administration of it.
Yep.
The curriculum they're getting is given to them from the federal government, given to the state. The state has to implement it if they want their little carrots of money that they get issued from the federal government. But that stuff's going to be gone, and it's going to start trickling down. The state right now, unfortunately, the representatives you have in the state legislature and at the state house and the governor's seat are very complacent with the level of education that's getting issued out to the students right now. As you saw in COVID, a lot of the parents were very upset with my kids this and that. But anyways, that's my story.
Okay, so what we have achieved today is basically the discussion of the budgets from the federal, state, and local levels.
Mm-hmm.
We will proceed to further detail coming next week, which will be the 7th of March already. And what we'll do is we'll try to entice the candidates to come on board, and maybe they want to discuss the budget.
Yeah.
Because that is something that's going to be very important to our community. So, Damon, thank you very much for being with me.
Thank you for having me.
And I hope you come back because, we need outside influence on our discussions.
Mm.
And what we need to do is see somebody that's looking from the top down.
Yeah. Well,
I hope you run again soon. Maybe for governor.
I don't know about that. Raising that type of money might be outside my
Well,
wheelhouse.
it's not about money. It's about achievement of what you want to get done. And you represent a lot of people in Danvers.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So thank you very
Danvers.
much. And next time I will have the new budget because it was not available today. Good night. Good afternoon, Danvers. Thank you.